Good evening, everyone. Our top story today is about the NFL. Obviously, we're going to be talking about a lot of injured players and their recovery today. There's a lot of news that we haven't had a chance to touch on because obviously the NFL draft and other things have been happening. But this is just a good week as we kind of head into the OTAs and everything like that coming up in a few to just get a check in on some of the players and their injury updates. We're getting a lot of that this week. Obviously, we're hearing about a lot of the fifth year options either being accepted or declined. And I think this is also a great time to discuss some of the depth of certain backfields that we really just haven't had a chance to talk about. A lot of those also involving injuries as well. There's just so much news that we finally have a chance to sit and digest now that the NFL draft has happened, and we can start to see the chips fall where they may. So obviously injuries, depth, all of that and more on Player Profiler today. All right, so the first story I wanted to talk through was Derrick Henry. So we do have it's not Derrick Henry, it's the Ravens backfield. There's a couple of injury updates that we have not had a chance to really talk about too much. And I think we got to talk about Keaton Mitchell. We got to talk about the new draft pick, Rasheen Ali out of Marshall, and just try to get a feel for what's happening in that backfield and obviously the impact on them as a team, on Lamar Jackson, but obviously on Derrick Henry as well. So we all remember Keaton Mitchell, he tore his ACL, I think it was week 15 versus Jacksonville Jaguars. As a fantasy community, we are so excited about this player. And we're really hoping that he was going to just take the mantle and run with it. But obviously he tore his ACL. He had crazy efficiency, and it was just really disappointing, but it's at least good to see. I think last week or so that the Ravens coaches, they feel like he's on path to come back at some point this season. Now, that's not what you want to hear. Some point this season, he tore his ACL really late, but it's at least good to know that there's no setbacks and he's still on track. I do think that this is going to be one of those guys when it comes to your redraft leagues, especially that you put on your IR and just let him sit here, basically like he did last year for a lot of people. Put him on your IR and let him sit there if he starts the season on the IR, because I do think based on the lack of moves they made in the draft, I would expect whoever the backup is to Derrick Henry to potentially get some run if Derrick Henry does succumb to an injury, knock on wood. All right, so that's Keaton Mitchell. We haven't talked about him a lot. I just wanted to make sure that we put him on our radar because honestly, again, if you add Keaton Mitchell to your team, put him in the IR spot for free, he may have some league-winning potential if there's an injury down the line. So the Ravens also spent a fifth-round draft pick on Rasheen Ali. So he's a running back out of Marshall. Solid player. I wouldn't say he's the most explosive player. Definitely not the speediest player. Definitely not the most contact-balanced player, but just a solid running back overall. Like any running back, if they get starter touches, they'll be fine in fantasy. But this is also a guy dealing with pretty significant injury too. So he ruptured his biceps tendon at the Senior Bowl. Yikes. That sounds terrible. But he's a good player. He has natural hands. I do think he'd be a good pass catcher. And if he got playing time, like I said, if there was any opportunity for him to start, he's definitely a player that we'd all be advising you pick up and maybe even start on your teams if he was going to get a lion's share of the workload. But it's something where the coaches there said that he's going to certainly be ready for training camp. So unlike Keaton Mitchell, who I think it's a super long shot when you tear your ACL at the end of last season for you to be ready by the beginning of this season. It seems like Ali is going to be there. And so for me, like I said, I'm going to throw Keaton Mitchell on my IR spot if they do start him like that to begin the year. But Rasheen Ali, outside of Justice Hill, there's not a lot of options behind. There's no other options behind Derrick Henry. This actually may be a team who's still interested in bringing in another running back. I do think that this is a good opportunity to get a nice, solid depth piece. Again, I don't think he's a guy who's going to step onto the field like Tajay Spears and split carries with Derrick Henry. I don't think he's going to be taking anyone's job anytime soon. I don't even think he's going to be taking Justice Hill's job on third downs because some of his pass blocking reps are rather trash, for lack of a better term. He could definitely improve there. But I do think, like I said, solid guy you just want to keep on your radar when you're talking about like depth pieces at running back, and at least it looks like they're going to get him to begin the season. But I basically said all that to say Derrick Henry's due for like a monster year, guys. if he could stay healthy, which at this age is a big thing. So, and I get it, and especially the amount of carries that he's gotten. I mean, Derrick Henry, he is just like that. He is just nasty, bro. He is going to eat in this offense if he is healthy. So last year, I think he had 280 rushes for over, I think like over 1,100 yards, 4.2 yards per carry, 12 touchdowns. That was like, everyone said that was a terrible year. He's fallen off. And he was like, I think top 2 or 3 in the league in rushing last year. So that's his fallen off year. I think that he could have an amazing year because I really feel like he's going to have kind of like a Jamal Williams style of a year where, yeah, he may not score a ton, or you may not rush for a ton of yards based on just having Lamar Jackson in your backfield. But I do think the touchdowns are going to be there. I think he's going to score in like the 16, 17, maybe plus that range this coming year, even though he may not go over 1,000 yards. If you really think about it, like nearly every year of Lamar Jackson's career, if not every year, it may be every year, he's been the leading rusher on the team. And so I do think that Derrick Henry is probably going to overtake him in that if he can stay healthy the full season. But it at least just tells you Lamar Jackson will limit the ceiling to any running back in that offense. And like I said, I do expect Keaton Mitchell to come back at some point in the season. I think he will be a guy who may take Derrick Henry off the field like Tajay did last year, but I don't think anyone else is. Justice Hill's always going to factor in because they just love him. But I do think Derrick Henry, I'm even sleeping on him. This is one of those players where when I started my rankings, he was relatively low. And when I started doing my projections and factoring in the touchdowns and the increased efficiency, because you have to get a better line than what you saw on the Titans last year. He's due for a great year. So I do think we need to stop sleeping on him. All right, so we're going to get into more news like that. We're going to talk about some of the other running back depth charts, as well as some of the injury updates that we have in these backfields. And we're going to get right back to that. Wow, I'm just really crushing this transition. So we're going to get right back to that on the other side of this break. See you guys in 1 second.
This episode is made possible by Underdog Fantasy, and Underdog Fantasy is the leader in best ball. When you go to join an Underdog Fantasy best ball draft, it fills very quickly. Especially now, it's Best Ball Mania season, baby. Best Ball Mania 5. I can't believe they're at Best Ball Mania 5 already. $15 million in prizes. They're giving out $15 million with $1.5 million to first. Playing in best ball leagues makes you better. It helps train you on player value and strategy. And Underdog offers a lot more than just best ball contests. They offer pick'ems. My new favorite, the golf pick'ems. But they have the NBA pick'ems, baseball pick'ems going on throughout the offseason. Hit the pick'ems, back to best ball, hit the pick'ems. So use promo code Underworld. Promo code Underworld gets you a 50% deposit bonus up to $250. So they've increased the maximum deposit bonus. It was $100. Now it's up to $125. When you get the Underdog app, use promo code Underworld and go draft your ass off.
Yeah, guys. Get on Underdog. Again, code Underworld if you have not done it already for a litany of reasons. One, just amazing practice. If you just want to do practice, that is a perfect place to do it with that Best Ball Mania, especially. The pick'ems are amazing. I don't know. It feels just so much more intuitive than going to some of the other places. So make sure you guys tap into that. I'm going to do that right after this because, I mean, the NBA playoffs are so interesting, but they are so much more interesting, especially for us football heads, if you have a little something on it. So make sure you guys check that out. All right, next story. So John Keim reports that the Commanders want to really rely on a strong defense and a run game to help kind of take some of the pressure off of Jaden Daniels. And that makes a ton of sense based on the player that Jaden Daniels is coming out of LSU. So I get it. He was amazing from a passing standpoint last year. But obviously, a lot of the analysts know, like, some of that was it wasn't false, but I do think, like, there is some questionable stuff around his playing profile that I do think a team, especially, I mean, he's a rookie, you want to make sure you take as much burden on his arm as possible. All right. So I do think, like, when you compare him to Justin Fields, I do think he's a better version, but there are some similarities that are a little concerning, especially when you talk about like pressure to sack ratio, really leaning to why they don't want to pass the ball. So his pressure to sack ratio was actually higher than Justin Fields, and Justin Fields was horrible, has been horrible in the NFL, and so you hope that improves. So Jaden Daniels at a 24.5%, Justin Fields is at a 23.6%, which are both like historically high rates. So you really want to do everything you can, especially as he learns the NFL system, learns the speed of the league, all that stuff, to really just take him out of those situations and allow him to just turn around and hand off the ball to like Austin Eckler, Brian Robinson, etc., or take off himself. And so I do think that they're going to be one of the stronger rushing teams that I've what am I saying? I think so. I've seen comments come in. I'm going to tap onto those, but I get so easily distracted. So I see your comments. What's up, Jamie? Appreciate that. Hey, Famous Jay. We don't have too much info about Nick Chubb in today's show. What I said last week is I would be very surprised if you're going to see Nick Chubb play at the beginning of the season. I do think he's another one of those guys, like he'll be significantly higher priority than like a Keaton Mitchell potentially, but I don't think he's going to start the season based on all the injuries that happened with him. But I do think he's good. We're going to get him probably in the first quarter of the season, at the end of the first quarter of the season or so. So you just got to throw him on your benches then, but I'm not prioritizing him like it's Nick Chubb of old. He had a massive knee injury at the worst age time of your career. So it's just something that you got to consider. I am not putting a lot of stock in Nick Chubb this year. All right, so back to Jaden Daniels. So I do think that they're going to run the ball more significantly than I even thought. So the first time I saw this quote, I actually was like, that's just complete BS. Like Cliff Kingsbury, they're gonna air the ball out like crazy, right? And there's a good reason to. Cliff Kingsbury offense, the way that he structures it, they do pass the ball a lot. They spread the field out, and they actually create running lanes for their running backs as well as their quarterbacks. But then I went and looked at the numbers, and it's like he actually wasn't terrible from a rushes per game standpoint when he was in Arizona. So in 2019, they were 19th. 2020, they were number 6 in the NFL with 30 attempts per game. 2021, they were number 7 in the NFL with 29 attempts per game. And then 2022, they were 20th again with 26 attempts per game. So really from his standpoint, he's pretty consistent. It's between 25 and 30 attempts per game. That's like lock it in. And that includes your quarterback. So I do think that they're actually going to be a decently high attempt rushing team and probably giving you 25 to 30 rush attempts per game, all guys included, right? And that really does match with what Jaden Daniels does. So Jaden Daniels, he unfortunately takes off like so fast. He takes off real fast, more so than all the other Russian quarterbacks who were in the NFL today. So he took off at 25% whenever he got like pressured. He scrambled at 25% of the time when he got pressured. Significantly higher than Lamar Jackson at 17% in college, Jalen Hurts at 21% in college, even Justin Fields at 19% in college. Jaden Daniels takes off. Like he takes off real fast. And so while that isn't great from a fantasy standpoint, I do think that's something that you have to love. It's not great from an NFL standpoint. It's great in a fantasy standpoint. Jaden Daniels is going to take off and give you rushing yards. As long as this man can stay healthy, he could get down and not get banged up. I think he's going to be great for fantasy. But honestly, some of these things are really make you temper your enthusiasm for him as like an NFL quarterback this season. I think he'll be fine long-term, but this season may be rough for a couple of these rookies. Now, this guy. It's not a hemorrhoid cushion. It is a neck roll. Over there, the Colts. I'm a Colts fan, and it is a neck roll. Oh, he said a hemorrhoid cushion. But I do think this has some negative impact on the running backs in the backfield. So obviously, I'm going to start with Austin Eckler. I think that he is one of the bigger losers with this type of approach for this team. One, Jaden Daniels does not pass the ball to his running backs like that. In LSU, he just didn't do it that much. Like, they never catch the ball. He does not – he is looking down the field. He's getting sacked or he's taking off. So, like, the reception opportunities for this backfield overall just seem to be rather limited. They're going to probably try to force the ball to Eckler. I get it, but I don't think he's going to be catching a ton of passes. Two, at this point in his career, I think Brian Robinson may be better on first and second down. He's just a much hard-nosed runner at this point. Speed-wise, you guys, you may laugh, but they're kind of similar speed-wise at this point in their careers. And I just worry about his upside when you have a quarterback like I was talking about with Lamar Jackson, who's going to kind of eat so much into your work already. Then you have a guy in your backfield, Brian Robinson, who I truly believe is going to be the first and second down guy. Austin Eckler, I'm going to have no shares of him in any league. Like, I'm just not interested in Austin Eckler. I was not interested in him last year, and it kind of seemed like the right decision. But Brian Robinson, I do think that just because of all the stuff happening, I don't mind throwing him on my bench late. Like I said, I do think that this rushing backfield, they're going to run a lot, but it's going to be spread out so much that I don't love it. But if you think about it, he's going to be a guy like pushing up the middle, getting those touchdowns. I do think he's going to be the goal line guy for sure. I think that he's going to get like a line share that carries on first and second down. And I just think he's not going to catch the ball for real. The only situation where I think he's going to catch more passes is if Austin Eckler gets hurt, which is possible at his age for sure. But I do think if you wanted just a late round stash, Brian Robinson may be one of those like Gus Edward type of guys this year with some more upside if the starter does, or if the co-backfield committee mate gets injured. But yeah, he's going to be scoring some touchdowns. So I don't mind Brian Robinson. Not a big fan of Austin Eckler. And I love Jaden Daniels in fantasy this year. Yep. Yeah, we're not hemorrhoid cushions. Why would I advertise? I don't know why I would advertise a hemorrhoid cushion. But hey, why not? Hemorrhoid Preparation H, holler at us for a sponsorship. Okay. Make sure everyone in here, we got a couple people in here. Make sure you guys are all liking the live and subscribe to this channel. We do this every single day, going live with the news that happened in the league. So make sure you guys are subscribing to this channel and like the video if you can. All right. Next story came out a few days ago. Just want to talk about it really quick. Jets head coach Robert Saleh said that he doesn't expect there to be any restrictions placed on Aaron Rodgers in phase 3 of the offseason. So at their OTAs, he's not going to have any restriction, which it makes sense, guys, right? Like he was trying to play at the end of last season. Mm-hmm. So while that seemed so crazy, and it was crazy, it was truly insane. He was not going to play last year, but it at least gives you the confidence that he's going to be good once the season starts. And I think that I just wanted to take a moment to stop the freak out that's been happening with Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson, like, we got to chill out. Garrett Wilson's still going to ball out. I still think Garrett Wilson is a first-round pick in redraft leagues. The opportunity is there, and I get it. So many people, like the fantasy community, we are in love with Malachi Corley. This entire channel, the main channel, like we're all in love with Malachi Corley, and I get it. He plays in the slot. Garrett Wilson lines up in the slot a ton. Malachi Corley's just a dog after the catch. They went and got Mike Williams, so everyone's like, oh my God, Garrett Wilson, he got to drop his stock. And I think that we just always got to remember, like based on this story that I said about Aaron Rodgers, the quarterback play is such a drastic difference this year. Even if Aaron Rodgers sucks ass, he will be significantly better than the team was last year. So they were the worst in the league from a quarterback rating out of all 32 teams combined. Like it was just, they were terrible. And if you look at, it's just one of those things, you just look at some of the statistics for Garrett Wilson, it's hilarious. So he caught 57% of his targets. That's honestly good for like the quality of play he had, but that's awful compared to all the other top guys. For instance, CeeDee Lamb got 75% of his targets. Garrett Wilson had 95 receptions on 168 targets for 1,042 yards and three touchdowns. For a person who dealt with like literally the worst case scenario last year, he really, really balled out. And I think like we just got to stop freaking out, because if Aaron Rodgers is healthy, that quality of target goes up so much that we need to stop tripping. But also, hey, if Tyrod Taylor is not healthy, I mean, like he will be a Tyrod Taylor made star if my man Rodgers is not healthy and Tyrod Taylor has to come in, because Tyrod Taylor throws the ball to his number one dude, and Tyrod Taylor will take some shots. Like we saw when he started getting in for the Giants last year, Tyrod Taylor's going to chuck it up and let you go get it to his deep ball players. So I'm not super worried about it. So even if Mike Williams comes back, which coming off an ACL, again, it usually takes you a year to be back and then another year to be back to who you were prior to the ACL. So I'm not expecting Mike Williams in his truest form this year. Malachi Corley, he is a rookie, guys, and we have to consider that. And how, I mean, we've seen how Aaron Rodgers is sometimes with rookies if he's not on the same page. Granted, I know he's going to be living in his guest house. That's not a guarantee with Aaron Rodgers that he's going to still get you the ball. Garrett Wilson, even with less targets, like you just got to think, if he doesn't have 168 targets, all right, great. He's going to have like 130 something. I expect him to probably catch more passes than 95, even still, with that target quality based on the percentages I told you before. And even if he does that and just gets a couple more touchdowns, he had 3 last year. I imagine he could get 7. Maybe, I mean, yeah, 7 touchdowns is not crazy. You're looking still at a top 10 receiver. And then there's a significant touchdown upside with this guy. So I do think we got to stop freaking out. Garrett Wilson is going to be fine. I'm drafting him in the first round, and I am not worried about it. All right, so that is the Jets. All right, let's move to the other side it's New Jersey, I guess. Let's move to New Jersey with the Giants. So there's been some discussion around Eric Gray and him having a bigger role in the offense this season coming up. And this is a super interesting topic because I know I'll talk about the draft pick they made. People are really super hype on this guy. And he's solid, but I don't think he's amazing. Now, Eric Gray, 5th round pick last year. He barely got any work. So he got 17 carries for 41 yards. He just did not do anything. But I do think that, like any running back, and like I just said about Ali, if you just want to handcuff and you have the bench space to handcuff, he will be the handcuff for Devin Singletary. I don't think it's going to be Tyrone Tracy. I think it's going to be I keep forgetting his name. I have to look at it. Eric Gray, because he didn't play last year. It's going to be Eric Gray as the handcuff to Singletary for sure to me. I think there's even opportunity for him just because he's so much bigger than Singletary. He's 211 pounds, bigger running back. He may be in that goal line if Singletary ends up struggling there. But I do think if there's any injuries to Singletary, and we've seen that in the past, he is the guy to own. I think it is a clear he's going to be the handcuff, regardless even of what this report said. I just not super excited about him. I'm not going to think he's going to do anything if Singletary plays because he's not super explosive. He's kind of slow and lumbering, and he's 211, but he's not like he's 240. He's just not the fastest player, most explosive player, but definitely somebody to just know in your head when this comes to draft season. If you get Devin Singletary late, throw him on your bench if you have the depth. It's more about actually knowing his name for waiver wires. Now, just let's touch on the recent draft picks. So in the 5th round this year, the Giants drafted Tyrone Tracy out of Purdue. He played at Iowa as well, and he's actually converting from wide receiver to running back, and he has not played running back for that long. This is one of those guys where I think as a fantasy community, there's a euphoria around him that he's going to take Devin Singletary's job and be the every down back, or he is the guy to own in this backfield, and he is explosive and exciting for sure. I just have a feeling they've drafted him for this new kick return rule, which is basically a punt, which he's amazing at kick return and punt return. So I do think that he has an immediate role there, but he is not a running back yet. You could see it when he plays. He does not have running back vision yet. His contact balance definitely needs some work. Clearly his receiving is great, but his pass protection is really bad as well. So I just can't see for a team who's dealing with a quarterback coming off an ACL or a quarterback like Drew Lock, I can't see him getting in on the field too much, except for package plays. Maybe as the season progresses, he'll get there more and more. But I think there's so many people who just want this to be a competitive backfield. He just doesn't know how to play the position yet. He's not there. They paid Devin Singletary, and I do think from a fantasy standpoint, this is another guy who's just a big winner of this backfield situation. No one ever wants to draft Devin Singletary. It's not a sexy thing to do, but he is going to be the clear winner here. I'm not saying he's Raheem Mostert, guys. I'm not saying he was Raheem Mostert last year. But what I was telling everyone last year was Raheem Mostert is a starting running back in the NFL, and you're getting him with one of your last couple of picks. You throw him on your bench, you see what happens. Now, again, I'm not saying Devin Singletary is going to blow up like Raheem Mostert did, but if you listened to me last year, you had a league-winning player you just threw on the back of your bench because he's a boring pick, older running back on a team like this who sometimes deals with injury, but hey, he's a starting running back, so why not? Same situation here. Saquon Barkley dominated this like entire offense, and Singletary is going to come into a portion of that, get touchdown opportunities. They throw the ball to the running backs a decent amount in this Daboll system. And he also just did a good job with the Texans last year. He was really cooking at the end of last year too, once he got the starting gig basically over Dameon Pierce. He's really shifty. He is surprisingly good through contact for his size. And even though he's not a burner, he's just one of those tough dudes who I can see why NFL teams keep picking him up. Like, he is a good player, not amazing, but good. And if he is able to stay healthy, that's just one of those guys you can throw on your bench for free, especially if you get, again, talking about underdog at best ball. I'm throwing him on most of my teams too, just as a free spot. And so I absolutely love him. So with the significant offensive line upgrades versus what they had last year with Saquon, with the running back involvement in the passing game, and then also just like kind of the muddy backfield behind him, I do think Singletary is a major winner. Throw him on your bench at the end of your drafts, especially in redraft leagues. All right. And also just to give you guys the order again, is Devin Singletary. The clear handcuff to me is Eric Gray, who's going to get more carries than he did last year for sure. And I think it's a pretty distant third is Tracy. I think he's going to be a special teamer for sure. All right. So we got some comments really quick on a few players. Just want to touch on that. Wasn't Amari Rodgers similar to Corley play style? He failed with Rodgers. I hear that comment. I think the players are significantly different. I think like there's just more athleticism. Malachi Corley, even if you just look at his stats and his tape, is just better than Amari Rodgers. But I mean, it's a good comparison for sure. Next, Devin Singletary may be closer to Zach Moss production. I could see that. I mean, hopefully not Zach Moss in Buffalo, but I could see more of Zach Moss, what he did this past year. And also, again, what Devin Singletary did last year. He's not going to kill you. He's not going to crush you in a good way, but he's also going to not kill you in a bad way. I think he's just going to be a solid running back. And there's always a point in the league in the season where you're just looking for a starter. He's just going to be one of those like spot fillers that you just need to have when you're dealing with injuries that I love to have. And then I heard a rumor Dallas is interested in Dameon Pierce. They need to be interested in everybody. I don't know what the hell they're doing right now. Dameon Pierce would be very interesting. And I wasn't even going to really touch on this story at the end, but there are the GM Casario was saying like they really have a big role planned for Dameon Pierce in this offense. I believe that when I'll see it. Like I don't know why. I don't know why that's going to change with the same offensive coordinator and the same general management. You went and got a running back in Joe Mixon. I thought they were going to draft somebody else. Truly, because I truly thought they did not believe in Dameon Pierce. So I would not be surprised if he's just like building up that story to move him. I haven't heard anything about that, but it wouldn't be surprising because he's just like, he's not going to do anything behind Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon's going to devour that entire backfield. That's another big winner from the draft this past week. All right, so let's move on. And guys, keep those comments coming. I usually don't get to do like a live show for real. All right, so the quarterbacks in New England. So apparently there's going to be a quarterback competition in New England. Patriots head coach Jerome Mayo said that Drake May and Jacoby Brissett will compete for the team's starting quarterback job. It would blow my mind if Drake May is starting over Jacoby Brissett to begin the season. And this is one of those situations where even if he performs a little better, I think that there is confidence to be lost if you just throw Drake May into the fire. Depending on what the schedule looks like and how the team's starting to shake out, I just think it's so much safer just to start the vet. Let Drake May sit behind a good vet like Jacoby Brissett, who's an awesome dude, is going to teach him like everything he needs to know. Like you can truly learn how to just be a pro's pro who the locker room loves by just sitting and watching Jacoby Brissett. Just let him start for a little while. And I'm sure Drake May is going to start a couple games this year, but I would not throw him into the fire week one personally. There's some people who think just throw him into the fire and they'll sink or swim. Just based on what I saw in college, I would hate to see a person like Drake May's confidence go, and then you get like a Sam Darnold 2.0. Like, I think you just like settle in, kind of figure out things as a team, let the team kind of come together. And if he has to start later in the season, at least the team knows what they're doing and they can support the young guy. But I think it would be kind of crazy to just crush his confidence like that. All right. So Got to talk from like a fantasy standpoint though. So who are like the big fantasy impact players if Jacoby Brissett were to start, which I'm expecting to happen? I don't know. I'm trying to do this for every single story. Who's like the fantasy winners and losers? This is like the toughest one. I'm gonna be throwing like Polk and Baker on like the back of my rosters wherever I can. But I think if I had to force one, it would probably be Ramondre. And I get it, people are concerned about Antonio Gibson being added to the backfield. I just think that this is the team who's going to run the ball. Like, run, 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 run. So we all remember Jacoby Brissett. He started a couple. He actually, I don't know if he even really started any games last year. He just came in for mop-up duty for Sam Howell. I think maybe he started one. But he started like for most of the season in Cleveland the year before. He started with the Colts prior. Like he started a couple of times. So I think it was like, was it six? I can't even read the 6 of 16 in the last. Oh, sorry. It was 2 or more touchdowns in only 3 of his last 13 games. That's 2 or more touchdowns in only 3 of his last 13 games. And honestly, I just stopped counting. I actually think it goes further than that when he was with the Colts. They don't pass for a lot of touchdowns. They don't pass the ball a ton with Jacoby Brissett traditionally as a starting quarterback. And I think even especially because the offensive coordinator now, Van Pelt, was with him in Cleveland, you're getting over like 1 passing touchdown a game, a little over that with Jacoby Brissett. There's going to be opportunities to run the ball. Now, the thing with Ramondre is his receptions are such a big part of his production. I do think those are going to come down. You obviously got Antonio Gibson, and like I said, Jacoby Brissett, he doesn't pass the ball to his running backs amazingly either. I just think that overall touchdown opportunity, total carries are going to be there for Ramondre, either with Jacoby Brissett, because obviously, I mean, it's Nick Chubb, so I get it's different, but they lean on the running game whenever he starts. And if Drake May comes in, they're definitely leaning on the running game if he comes into the fold. Yeah. Said Jacoby Brissett, you got the stats. Averaged 13.5 fantasy points when he was with Cleveland. That's good for a backup quarterback. That's not good in fantasy in any sense. Yeah, that's not great. So yeah, I'm still throwing Ramondre on my teams if he's a good value. I think I'd rather get him after the 3rd round. I'm never going to be excited about drafting him, but that's one of those guys who no one's going to be excited about who may end up like having an amazing year. So don't sleep on Ramondre, guys. All right. So here's another. This is a story, and I just want to talk about because this is not substantiated. So want to make sure everyone absolutely knows that. This is not substantiated, family. It matters that you take and you look at these reports really specifically because there's a lot of reports saying so-and-so feels that something's going to happen. Like, nah, fam. It matters that they report from a source on the team, and this did not happen. So there are rumors that Khalil Herbert is on the trade block. Those are just rumors. That's not real. That's just rumors right now. That's not real. It's possible and it makes sense, but it's not like a real story. Okay. So I get why he said it, right? It was Kevin Fishbane of The Athletic is because DeAndre Swift, they just signed him to a 3-year, $24 million deal. Very good deal in this running back landscape. Really good deal. And the staff is way high, super high on Rashawn Johnson. And so Khalil Herbert, especially since he missed time, he had the opportunity to start, was okay. Just the ankle and back injuries, like you can't really, he could not get over that fully this last season. I do think that it would make sense for them to trade him. But again, there's no reports that's shown that this is happening. But because it's a fantasy show, let's just imagine if it did. So if it happened, where do we think that, if you guys also throw it in the chat, if this happened, where do you guys think would make the most sense for Khalil Herbert to go? We got a couple people in here. I'm going to give you like 2 seconds to throw some places into the chat. Where do you guys think that Khalil Herbert would be a great fit to be traded to? I think there's one obvious one, but let me know what you guys think in the chat. Anyone? Nah, you guys have no ideas where Khalil Herbert can go? The obvious one. Yeah, there we go. It was a free choice. The obvious one is Dallas. Like, Dallas is like the place that makes the most sense. You get a hyper efficient running back if he could stay healthy, but now he'll be paired with and Ezekiel Elliott. So you almost get like a poor man's version of what Zeke and Tony Pollard did in 22. I love the idea of that in Dallas. I really, really do. Again, no reports that is being discussed. I actually think, like, you said Herbert to the Giants. Like we just talked about, the running back depth is not incredible, so that would make a ton of sense as well. And another place I was going to add too, so the Ravens. I think the Ravens would make sense too. So you got Keaton Mitchell coming back from a late season ACL tear. I'm not super high on Ali, honestly, anyway, but he's also dealing with an injury. Justice Hill is Justice Hill. So that just seems like a place, like the Ravens just seem like a team who would do a move like this. So I think those are great options. And then I'm just throwing in the Chargers just because, Jim Harbaugh, he's going to just keep adding running backs if he can't help it. But I do think if that were to happen, that Swift would have the potential to be like a top 10 running back. The only reason like we're not higher on Swift is because he's splitting the backfield right now. We don't know how it's going to shake out. But I think everyone expects him to get a decent amount of carries and get an increase in his receptions, because we all know Philly, they're always at the bottom of the league with throwing the ball to their running backs. So he would be potentially like a top 10 guy, health, all things considered with his health though. And I think Rojo would be like the dude, like the number one guy. I see the comment about Rojo. I'm not putting that one up. You guys have to go to the live chat to see that comment. All right. I think there's a few other things I want to touch on before we get out of here, guys. So, Texas GM Nick Caserio said that Tank Dell is doing great after suffering a minor gunshot wound. We met him on the gram, and he said he is fine, okay? On Instagram, he said that he's doing okay himself. This was a clean shot through the leg, though, and I don't know which leg it was, but it's at least looks good that he's going to be okay, but it went through and through. I think that we need to be adjusting our expectations for Tank Dell this season. He just got shot. He broke his leg. Like, I think we need to make sure that we're not over drafting him, because I already expected, because of the leg break, that he's going to start relatively slow anyway. You now got Stephon Diggs in the fold, so the targets may not even be as high as we thought. Nico Collins is still always going to be, I think he's still going to be a leader on that team in targets. Like, there's just a lot of competition for Tank Dell in addition to his health. And I think, they brought Noah Brown back as well. I just think that this is a situation where I'm trying my best. Like, obviously, if it's a dynasty, like, you take Tank Dell, I'm not worried about it. But I'm expecting Tank Dell to have a ramp up this season where the first quarter, maybe even the first third, look bad. And then we start to see the Tank Dell of old later in the season. But just I wouldn't be expecting fireworks out of the gate, guys. All right. Next story, just a quick couple tidbits. DJ Moore worked out April with the Bears. So, yeah, Bears, Caleb Williams, Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, they all got together and worked out. I don't even know why we're talking about that. Of course, they're doing that. That's like every team. All right, so TJ Hawkinson. So he looks like he's ahead of schedule on his recovery from his right ACL and MCL tear. And that's really impressive, because no one has him even as a top 10 tight end just because of the injury. But if we're going to be getting him back in the first third of the season, that's amazing, man. Like with how ACLs are, man. I just don't understand. Like, players, they're just not like us at all. Like, if I tore my ACL and MCL, I'm 37. If I tore my ACL and MCL, I may just pass. Like, I may be done for life. But this guy, he tore his ACL and MCL at the end of the season, and he's probably going to be back at the first quarter of the season. Like, we obviously got to pay attention to this one. I think once we get more like substantiated information, it's going to help us. But maybe we probably need to start talking about TJ Hawkinson a little bit more again. The biggest concern for me is just what's going to happen at quarterback there. Because I truly don't expect them to chuck it as much as they were with the backups last year with Sam Darnold. And then with JJ McCarthy, I think they're going to try to run the ball like crazy. Yeah, you drafted a ton of Hawkinson and best balls. That's not a bad strategy at all. That's definitely a great, because in best ball, you always want to have at least 2, definitely 3 if you can help it. Tight ends, I love the idea of something like that, because I do think you're going to get some boom weeks, especially if you think like it's either Sam Darnold, JJ McCarthy, especially later in the season where you can get some of those boom weeks. maybe like JJ McCarthy or Sam Darnold will be more comfortable in the offense, hopefully by then, and be able to get it to one of the more reliable positions on the field, which will be a TJ Hawkinson at tight end. So love that idea, Famous Jay. All right. Speaking of ACLs, Daniel Jones probably should have dedicated more time to this, but he said he's been running and making cuts during his rehab from his torn right ACL. And I believe this. I think that's makes sense. I feel like there's not pressure, but he's kind of like in a situation where he needs to play. He really, really needs to play. They were very close to drafting a quarterback in the draft. There were those discussions. I mean, it wasn't even. It was reports that said it, even though Drew Lock denied it. But there were reports from the Seahawks side that said Drew Lock went to the Giants so he could start. I think it's almost a lock that Drew. Wow. I think it's a lock that Drew Lock is going to start to begin the season. And I wouldn't be surprised if he does well that he plays a little longer. And so I do think Daniel Jones has he has some pressure to get on the field. You obviously don't want him to do it too soon. But yeah, like I do think that he's really pushing to get on the field, and especially since this report came from him directly. It wasn't like it came from a coach or anything who I haven't seen them really pushing out too much of his injury updates as much as he has himself. So that's just kind of interesting. And the last thing I want to talk about was nothing to do with football at all. So unless you've been under a rock, the best rap beef in the history of rap beefs is taking place right now. Originally, it was Kendrick Lamar versus Drake versus J. Cole. J. Cole apologized and bowed out when he was kind of going back and forth with Kendrick Lamar. And now he looks like the smartest guy in the room because Kendrick Lamar and Drake have been going back and forth. And the biggest winner, outside of J. Cole, obviously, has been the rap fans. Like, it has been utterly amazing. I'm a huge rap fan. I don't know if anyone who's been watching the stream the whole time, I've dropped literally Easter eggs of every single song throughout this entire show. And there's been 8 tracks so far. And Kendrick Lamar probably, while I'm doing this, has probably like dropped another song. Like, he's been dropping like crazy over the last 48 hours. It's truly an amazing time to just be alive right now from a hip hop standpoint. And as a football fan and a hip hop fan, I just absolutely love that I'm able to even say this on a football show. It's super dope. I think that this is the best rap battle in history for sure, just because of the talents of the top 2 guys. The amount of back and forth that they're having is just utterly amazing right now, because typically you get like a couple of rounds and that's it. We have 8 total songs from these guys. I think it's like 5-3, like 5 for Kendrick, 3 for Drake, not even including what J. Cole put out. So this is just a great time to be in the scene. But that's all I got, guys. Thank you guys so much for hopping in here. Thank you guys so much who've been in the chat. You guys have been holding it down. I'm going to be going live again next Sunday, but like I said before, we do this every single day. Every single day, we have somebody going live with the latest NFL news. So if you guys want to tap into that, make sure you guys are subscribed to this channel. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe this video. And I'll see you guys next week, and you'll see one of us tomorrow. Peace out.
Hey, I want to thank you for being part of this broadcast. If you have any thoughts on it, leave a comment. If you enjoyed it, make sure you leave a like. And if you want to see more shows on the Player Profiler channel, subscribe to it. That's how we know you want more.